There are moments when silence seems to hold a secret the whole world has forgotten. It is at that invisible point, between the last breath and the first glimpse of eternity, that the journey begins that so many fear and so few understand. Chico Xavier used to say that death is not the end, it is only the return to one's true home. And when he uttered those words, his voice trembled as if seeing the invisible with the eyes of the heart. He knew that there, on the border between body and spirit, human fear dissolves before the divine vastness. That is why, every time someone asked him what happens after life, Chico smiled serenely and answered, "Life goes on." Simple as that. But what does this continuation mean? Where do we go when the body falls silent? What landscape awaits us when the world's clock marks the last second? These questions, which many avoid, resided at the center of Chico's mind and soul. His mediumship was not a spectacle, it was a bridge. Through it, he conversed with the afterlife as one converses with distant friends, bringing back messages that defied logic but warmed the soul. He described death as a gentle awakening, an opening of the eyes after a long dream. The body falls asleep, but consciousness awakens with a lucidity never before experienced. Most people, Chico said, are afraid because they ignore their own nature. "We are spirits living a brief experience in the flesh," he repeated. And when we forget this, we begin to fear the return, like children who cry when leaving their mother's lap, without realizing that they are only changing rooms within the same house. Imagine the exact moment when the heart stops and the air fades. For the earthly observer, it is the end. For the spirit, it is the beginning of a broader perception. Chico Buarque recounted that many disembodied spirits described the same phenomenon. First, a sensation of lightness, then a calm astonishment, like someone awakening from a very real dream. Some see their own body resting and don't believe it. They try to speak, touch, shout, and no one answers. That's when they realize they are in another plane of existence. Some feel a loving presence, a vibration that envelops and consoles. "No one dies alone," Chico Buarque said. "There are always invisible hands that support, gentle voices that welcome, hearts that recognize the new spiritual creature as part of the same eternal family. But before this luminous embrace, there is a moment of absolute silence. Chico called it the divine pause. It is when the newly liberated soul observes its own past without words. There, all lies dissolve, all disguises fall away, and the being sees itself as it truly is. There is no external judgment, only the clarity of one who sees with the eyes of conscience. Some feel profound gratitude, others regret. All, without exception, realize that their time on earth was only a fragment, a step on the infinite ladder of evolution. This understanding, however, does not arrive violently. It is born like the dawn, light after the shadow, gradually revealing the continuity of love. Chico insisted that death is an act of mercy, not punishment. The spirit, freed from physical limitations, recovers the memory of other lives, feels part of an ordered universe, and realizes that nothing it has lived was in vain. He compared the experience to a long journey. The body is the suitcase we leave at the dock. The spirit is the traveler who continues. And this simple image contained the wisdom of someone who knew that detachment only hurts those who cling. Life, according to Chico, is a school, and death is merely the bell that announces the end of a lesson, not the end of learning. Even so, how many of us live as if this crossing will never happen? How often do we forget that time is a loan, not a possession? Chico used to say that man's greatest mistake is spending his life running from death when he could use it to learn to live life to the fullest. He observed that whoever fears the end also fears love, because loving is always a risk of loss. But true love is not lost. It transforms. When someone departs, they don't take affection with them. They leave it vibrating in space, like a perfume that lingers after their presence. The spirit feels this energy and is guided by it. The vibration of love is the first beacon that the newly deceased sees. Chico explained that in the first perceptions after death, the spirit sees a light in the distance, sometimes gentle, sometimes intense, and is drawn to it. This light does not come from outside, but from within the being itself, reflected by the love it has cultivated. Each one lights their own path with their own virtues, he taught. Those who have lived with kindness find a clear path. Those who have lived in indifference need more time to see. It is not a matter of punishment, but of vibrational affinity. The universe, Chico said, is made of harmony, and each spirit naturally gravitates towards the environment that corresponds to its frequency. Perhaps this is the most comforting and at the same time most challenging part of his doctrine. Nothing happens to us by chance. Pain, separation, loss, everything has an educational purpose. Death doesn't steal, it only gives back. And what is truly ours, love, wisdom, experience, no one can take away. He reminded us that the spirit is the architect of its own destiny, and that each earthly choice shapes the scenario of spiritual awakening. There is no fixed hell or heaven, he said. There are states of mind. The impact of his words came from the serenity with which they were spoken. Chico didn't speak of death with fear, but with gentleness. And when he described the reunion with the spiritual world, there was in his eyes a longing that wasn't sadness, but recognition. He knew, like few others, that true life begins where the body ends. Therefore, his message was never one of mourning, but of continuity. He saw the spiritual plane not as shadow, but as amplified light. The spirit is a flame that doesn't go out. It only changes its lamp, he would say, smiling. Now imagine that flame inside you. Think about how many times it has been extinguished by doubts, guilt, and fears. Think about how many times you've wondered if there's anything after. Perhaps the answer isn't in words, but in the very feeling that arises when you hear the name of someone who has passed away and feel that somehow they still exist. Chico Buarque affirmed that this feeling isn't a memory, it's contact. Death doesn't sever the threads of love, it only makes them invisible to the eyes. And it is at this point that mystery transforms into hope. Because according to Chico, if death is awakening, each life is a rehearsal for the great dawn. We don't need to fear the unknown, but prepare our hearts to recognize the light when it arrives. And preparation is neither ritual nor blind faith, it is action. It is the forgiveness we offer, the patience we cultivate, the compassion we silently distribute. Each act of kindness is a brick in the bridge we will cross. In the end, Chico always returned to the same certainty. Everything is life, only the address changes. And this phrase, so simple, contains the key to all solace. Life does not end, it only transforms into another form of being. The departing spirit continues loving, thinking, working, evolving. What we call death is merely the boundary where human vision ends and spiritual vision begins. So, if the idea of dying scares you, remember his words. No one dies. We simply return to our spiritual reality. And if the longing for those who have passed weighs heavily on your heart, remember, this longing is proof that love survives the distance between worlds. One day, when time has completed its cycle, we will meet again all those we loved, not as shadows but as lights that have always been with us. And so, under the shadow of Chico Xavier's wisdom, we understand that death is not tragedy, it is return. It is not separation, it is reunion. It is not an end, it is a beginning. The body rests, the spirit awakens, and life continues, serene and infinite, under the loving gaze of God. But before learning what happens in the first hours of this new existence, before witnessing the awakening and the reunions that Chico described with tears in his eyes, it is necessary to open your heart to understand what it truly means to be born again. And this revelation begins in the next part. There is a moment when the body rests and the silence becomes almost tangible. Everything seems to end, but for Chico Xavier, it is precisely there that life reveals its other face. He said that disembodiment is the most intimate moment of human existence, a secret that belongs only to the soul and to God. No science, no technology, no human gaze can follow what is happening when consciousness detaches from the body. Chico described this moment as a serene but powerful crossing, a passage as delicate as birth. The body stops responding, the heart fades, but the mind remains awake, trying to understand what is happening. It is the first shock of the liberated soul, realizing that it still exists. Chico used to recount that, in the first spiritual experiences he witnessed, he saw confused spirits, trying to move as if they still had weight. Some tried to walk. Others reached out their hands to touch family members without understanding why no one noticed them. It was as if they were living a lucid dream, too real to be an illusion, but too different to be reality. He said that the newly detached soul carries with it the impressions of the body, the habits, the reflexes. It still feels the impulse to breathe, the desire to speak, the fear of the dark. But little by little something changes. A light, Almost imperceptible breeze travels through the space, and there is a silent presence, a vibration that envelops the spirit. It is the call of the higher plane, the invitation to move forward. For those who remain, the scene seems like the end. The motionless body, the tears, the emptiness. But according to Chico, at that very moment on the other side, there is movement. The soul perceives that something has broken. The bond that held it to the body loosens, and a luminous thread, subtle, silvery, pulsating, shines for a few moments. He called it the silver thread, the line that connects the spirit to matter. When this thread breaks, the being returns to its spiritual nature. It's like waking up after a dream that's too long. Some awaken serenely, others with astonishment, and there are those who resist, trying to deny the inevitable. But the process is divinely guided. No one awakens without support. Chico narrated stories of spirits who, upon finding themselves outside their bodies, believed they were dreaming. One man, he said, upon realizing the scene of his own wake, cried out for help. "Wake me up, I'm alive," but no one heard him. Another, a very religious woman, felt no fear, only astonishment. Upon perceiving a soft light growing around her, she knelt in tears, convinced she was in the presence of angels. Chico described these passages without dramatization, but with sacred respect, because he knew that behind each account there was a soul in transition, learning that death is merely a change of consciousness. For the observer who experiences the pains of earth, it's easy to imagine this confusion. How many times have we felt out of place, unable to be heard, even in life? How many times have we shouted and no one seemed to hear? What Chico showed us is that the boundary between worlds is not made of walls, but of vibration. Just as sound does not travel in a vacuum, the newly disembodied spirit needs to learn to communicate on another frequency. It discovers that thought is the new language, and that feeling is the new form of presence. Chico said that, in the first hours after detachment, there is a silent review. The soul sees everything that was left behind, the beloved faces, the frequented places, the words spoken and those that were never uttered. This moment is one of profound emotion. It is when the spirit realizes how much it loved and how much more it could have loved. There is no imposed guilt, only a painful lucidity. It is a total remembrance, an awakening of consciousness to the truth. And in the midst of this process, there is always someone on the other side waiting. Friendly spirits, family members, mentors approach with tenderness. Sometimes a mother who passed away decades ago. Sometimes an old companion from other lives. No one arrives alone in the spiritual world, but there are also those who resist. Chico told stories of people who, due to intense attachments, did not want to leave. A mother who refused to abandon her sick son. A man trapped by the wealth he left behind. A young man who had died in an accident and still could not accept what had happened. These cases were painful, he said, because misunderstood love and material attachment make the transition slower. The spirit feels divided between two worlds, unable to move on and unable to return. It is then that spiritual mentors approach with infinite patience, sending vibrations of calm and confidence. Some are taken to places of rest, as if sleeping in fields of light. Others are comforted by the prayers of family members, whose sincere tears act as both a handkerchief and a remedy. Chico described the spiritual world not as a mirage, but as an organized continuation of life. There are colors, sounds, forms. There are cities, gardens, temples, schools, hospitals. Everything vibrates at a different frequency, lighter, more subtle. Newly arrived spirits, still imbued with earthly impressions, take time to perceive the difference. Some believe they are still alive on earth, frequent the same places, try to participate in conversations, until they realize that no one responds. That's when the shock happens. Denial transforms into a search, and in this search, prayer is a beacon. Chico used to say that no prayer is lost. When someone on earth prays sincerely for a loved one, a current of light is formed. This vibration reaches the spirit, even if it is still confused, and envelops it in tenderness. Love is the only energy that crosses dimensions, he repeated. He recounted that he had seen, in spiritual visions, golden threads connecting mothers and children, husbands and wives, distant friends, all united by the force of longing that sometimes consoles, sometimes awakens. Therefore, according to him, grief should be lived with faith, not with despair. Pain is natural, but despair is imprisonment. When love is transformed into prayer, it guides. When it is transformed into revolt, it imprisons. And it is at this point that the journey deepens. Chico explained that, after the initial impact of death, the soul begins to remember who it is. Old memories emerge, recollections of other lives, fragments of forgotten experiences. Consciousness expands, and the being understands that earthly existence was just another chapter. He said it's as if the veil of forgetfulness is slowly lifted. The spirit recognizes old companions, feels old affinities, realizes that true bonds were never broken. Death does not erase spiritual connections. It only reveals those that are eternal. Imagine, for a moment, that awakening. You open your eyes and find yourself amidst a brightness that doesn't blind, but consoles. You feel your body light, as if the air were made of music. Around you, familiar faces, serene smiles. Fear dissolves. Physical pain disappears. Everything seems new and at the same time familiar. This is the first impression of a balanced spirit, one that has cultivated faith and serenity. But Chico warned, not everyone experiences this lightness immediately. Those who lived in absolute disbelief or immersed in hatred and pride perceive a twilight around them. It is their own mind projecting what it has not yet managed to illuminate. The soul carries with it the heaven and hell it has built. For Chico, death is a mirror. It shows the spirit exactly what it is. And that is why he insisted so much on saying, the best preparation for death is learning to live consciously, because those who live with their eyes open to love awaken in peace. Those who live in selfishness awaken blind. Divine justice does not punish, it only reveals. The mystery is that, even among those who suffer, there is always help. Chico affirmed that the spiritual plane is full of tireless workers, spirits dedicated to welcoming newcomers, guiding them, and explaining what is happening. Some were doctors on earth, others simple anonymous individuals who learned to serve. He called them messengers of light. They are the ones who whisper calm in the ear of the lost soul, who envelop them with gentle vibrations, who lead them to places of treatment and learning. When Chico spoke of these things, it wasn't like someone narrating fantasy, but like someone describing a country he knows. And perhaps that's what makes his vision so powerful. It doesn't promise miracles, but it offers meaning. Death ceases to be an abyss and becomes a return. Life then acquires new value, because everything we do here echoes there. Every act of kindness is like a star that we will light at the moment of departure. And it is in this balance between mystery and truth that Chico's teaching takes root. He invites us to look at the end without fear, to understand that the soul is not extinguished by the last breath. It merely changes planes, like someone passing from shadow to light. And while the body is veiled on earth, the spirit begins to understand that love is the only good that survives. The rest, the name, the money, the power, remains behind like old clothes. At the end of this journey, when the soul begins to accept its new condition, the first feeling of peace arises. It's not euphoria, it's certainty. The certainty that everything continues, that no one dies, that something grand awaits each of us. Chico said that this is the moment when the spirit begins to hear the call of home, a gentle sound, not from outside, but from within, a divine reminder that the path continues. And it was at this point that he paused his words, took a deep breath, and said, almost in a whisper, death is only the first page of eternity. And what happens in the following hours, in the first discoveries of the self-aware spirit, is what we will reveal in the next part of this journey. Chico Xavier said that the first 3 hours after death are the most sacred of all spiritual existence. These are hours that do not belong to human time, for in them, the clock of earth ceases to exist. Everything happens in an interval of vibrations, where the soul begins to recognize its new nature. What was flesh dissolves in silence, and what was essence reveals itself in light. These hours are the birth of the immortal being, the instant when consciousness awakens to a life that never ends. According to Chico, this awakening is not the same for everyone. For some, it is as gentle as dawn. For others, as turbulent as an inner storm. Depends on how they lived, what they loved, what they feared. Each soul carries with it the exact reflection of the life it cultivated. During these first hours, the spirit feels a mixture of surprise and recognition. It's as if it suddenly realizes that everything it considered solid was just shadow, and that the invisible was always closer than it imagined. Chico recounted that many spirits approached him still confused, asking, "Why don't you hear me? Why doesn't anyone answer?" He smiled tenderly and explained that now the language was different, made of thought and vibration. The soul speaks through feeling. There is no longer a voice, only intention. And it is this discovery that changes everything. The understanding that love and fear have their own sound in the spiritual world. But what exactly happens during that interval? Chico described that in the first 3 hours, the soul crosses an energy field that he called the membrane of life. There, consciousness is freed from the impressions of the physical body, like someone removing worn-out clothes after a long journey. It is at this point that the first encounter occurs, the reunion with oneself. The spirit looks inward and perceives what it never wanted to see. The truth appears naked. There are no masks, justifications, or lies. Everything that was felt, thought, and done during life manifests as a living image. It is the projection of one's own interior in luminous or shadowy form. And you? Have you ever wondered what you would see if you could witness in a single instant everything you have thought and felt since birth? Have you ever imagined what it would feel like to face not the judgment of God, but the pure reflection of your own soul? Chico explained that this moment is not punishment, it is clarity. The soul recognizes what it needs to learn, what it has not yet understood, what it has postponed out of pride. Some cry with regret, others with gratitude. There are spirits who kneel in tears, not of pain but of relief, for finally understanding the meaning of life. At that moment, he said, forgiveness gains immense value. Those who learn to forgive in life feel lightness. Those who held grudges feel weight. There is no tribunal, there is attunement. The spirit is drawn to the plane that corresponds to the vibration it created. Divine law is mathematical in its perfection. Chico recalled a mediumistic communication from a man who, upon passing away, found himself enveloped in a gray mist. He was a staunch materialist, disbelieving in any afterlife. When he realized he continued to exist, he despaired. "I believed everything ended, and now I discover I continue," he said. Gradually, supported by friendly spirits, he came to understand that death is neither punishment nor miracle. It is simply continuity, and even in the mist, there was hope. Love is stronger than denial, Chico affirmed. But what if love was never experienced? What happens to those who did not love, who passed through life like hurried shadows, indifferent to the suffering of others? Chico answered without harshness, but with firmness. These awaken in emptiness. They feel surrounded by silence because love is the sound of the soul, and whoever did not cultivate it awakens deaf. No soul is condemned, but all reap what they have sown. Even the most hardened spirit one day hears the call from above and allows itself to be guided by the light. Spiritual time is merciful, and eternity is enough space for everyone to begin again. In those initial hours, the reunion with loved ones is one of the most moving phenomena. Chico described mothers who had waited decades for their children, extending their arms with luminous flowers. Children receiving their parents in prayers of gratitude. Loves recognizing each other without needing words, united only by the vibration of affection. He said that the joy of these reunions is impossible to describe with human language. It is the moment when love proves that it is stronger than death. Eyes meet, and in the silence the recognition is immediate. I waited for you. Have you ever thought about who might be waiting for you? Have you ever imagined that perhaps those you loved are still walking beside you, invisible, preparing for their reunion on the other side of life? Chico also warned that not everyone reunites with everyone immediately. Some need to go through a period of readjustment, others still have tests to fulfill, and some need to learn to love before seeing old loves again. The spiritual universe is organized by laws of affinity. The soul is drawn to the environment that corresponds to its vibration. Those who lived in goodness are led to regions of light. Those who plunged into hatred, to zones of shadow where they will learn in time to desire clarity again. And even in these dense regions, Chico saw messengers descending on rescue missions, bringing comfort and hope. There's a detail that few people know. Chico said that the first sounds heard by the awakened soul are not voices, but musical vibrations. Each soul has a note, a tone that identifies it in the universe. When it reunites with someone kindred spirit, the vibrations harmonize, and the spiritual embrace happens like a perfect chord. It's not body touching body, it's light mixing with light. That's how love manifests itself on the subtle plane. But there are also difficult reunions, spirits who wounded each other in past lives and now need to forgive each other. Chico said that forgiveness, on the other side, has creative power. When two souls reconcile, an intense light is formed, and that energy is used to heal other consciousnesses. That is why forgiveness is a law of progress. It not only liberates, but transforms the universe around it. Each act of reconciliation raises the vibration of entire worlds. What if you could see the effect of your emotions around you right now? If every thought left a trail of light or shadow in space, what landscape would your soul form? While these truths were being revealed through him, Chico remained serene. He said that the beauty of the spiritual world lies in its silent justice. No one needs judgment, because each person becomes their own law. Good deeds become guiding light. Evil becomes a mist that will be dispelled by learning. Everything is transient, except love. Love is the only substance that does not die, the only force that remains untouched by change. During the communications he received, Chico reported that many spirits spoke of the exact moment they felt the presence of a mentor. It was a form of gentle energy, radiating calm. Some described it as if they were embraced by perfume and music, others as if they were being covered by veils of light. It is at this instant that the soul understands that it is not lost, that there is an invisible support system, functioning with divine precision. Nothing is by chance. Every death is known. Every pain is accompanied. Every soul is assisted. Why do we fear the inevitable so much, when on the other side there is only continuity? Why do we resist the idea of departure, when it is only return? Chico believed that the fear of death stems from forgetting spiritual life. We are travelers who have lost our map and are frightened by the way back. He himself said he did not fear dying, but feared not having loved enough, because he knew that, at the moment of crossing, love is the only baggage that crosses the portals. It is love that defines the height to which the soul can ascend. Thus, in the first 3 hours after death, everything is decided: awakening, reunion, direction. It is the period in which the soul feels for the first time true freedom, but also the weight of its choices. The silver cord breaks definitively, and the spirit finally understands that death is only a way of being born again. And when Chico spoke of this, his eyes shone, as if he saw life stretching beyond the horizon. He said that every tear shed in faith is received in the spiritual realm as a drop of light, that every sincere prayer opens a window between worlds, and that when we think of those who have departed with tenderness, they also think of us. Love is an instantaneous correspondence between dimensions. No longing is in vain. These are the decisive hours, the interval in which the spirit learns that it was never alone. Those presences that before seemed only memories, the departed mother, the friend who left, the love that time took away, reappear, not as memories, but as living certainties. It is the instant in which the soul recognizes that everything continues, and that life is, in essence, indestructible. And upon understanding this, the soul finally smiles. It is the first smile after death, the first sign of peace, the first dawn of eternity. And it is from this awakening that Chico began to describe the second great revelation, the call of conscience and the choice of the path that each spirit must follow. But that belongs to the next part of this journey. Chico Xavier used to say that the deepest moment for the soul, after awakening in the spiritual world, is not the reunion with others, but the encounter with itself. It is the moment when the dazzle ceases and lucidity begins. The spirit, now aware that it continues to live, realizes that there is no escaping what it has built within itself. It is at this point that, according to Chico, the true judgment takes place, not divine judgment, but the tribunal of one's own conscience. Everything that was lived on earth returns as a living image, not to condemn, but to teach. He said that the spirit is seen as in a film, and each scene carries the weight or lightness of the intention with which it was created. Words spoken with love shine like sparks of light. Harsh words, merciless gestures, feelings of pride and indifference, all appear in different colors, projecting themselves around the soul like a vibrational mosaic. It is the moment of truth, Chico recounted that many spirits were surprised to discover that nothing is lost in the mental universe. Every thought, every emotion, every desire forms real energy that remains engraved in the subtle matter of consciousness. A woman he channeled said she was paralyzed by her own revealed life. She considered herself good and religious, but saw how much she had lived a life of appearances. She prayed with her lips, but judged with her heart. In the moment of truth, she said, intentions appear like flames. The good ones warm, the bad ones burn. This revelation transformed her spirit, and she asked to reincarnate soon, wishing to rebuild what she had distorted. Chico said this is common. After the initial shock comes the thirst for a new beginning. The soul understands that there is no punishment, only learning. However, there are cases that defy human logic. Chico once told the story of a man who denied God's existence throughout his life, ridiculing those who had faith. When he passed away, he was received by a spiritual mentor who introduced himself as an old childhood friend, someone he didn't even remember. This mentor, in luminous form, simply told him, "You didn't believe in God, but God always believed in you." The man broke down in tears, and in that silent confession, the transformation began. Chico said that this type of encounter is one of the most beautiful expressions of divine mercy, the moment when the soul discovers that God's love is unconditional, even when we deny it. But not everyone awakens with such clarity. Some get lost in spirals of remorse or confusion. Chico explained that there are spiritual regions where time seems to stand still, created not by God, but by the human mind. These are zones of dense vibration, formed by thoughts of fear, guilt, and attachment. Spirits who do not accept disembodiment remain there, trapped in their own denial. He called them those who sleep while awake. Some wander near the houses they inhabited, trying to continue their earthly routine, unable to perceive that the living do not see them. Others remain attached to objects or people, feeding on memories and desires. It is a state of illusion that can last for years until the spirit accepts the light that calls to it. Chico once recounted the story of a mother who, upon dying, refused to leave her young son. She remained trapped in the house, watching him grow up, fall ill, and eventually die, without realizing that time had passed. Only when she reunited with her son in the spiritual world did she understand that they had been separated only by ignorance. Attachment, Chico said, is the most subtle of prisons. He taught that true love liberates, but possessive love imprisons. This is one of the most difficult lessons of the spiritual realm, and perhaps the most necessary for those who desire peace after death. But there are also accounts of indescribable beauty, spirits who, upon awakening, are taken to places that Chico described as luminous cities, surrounded by gardens and lakes that emanate healing energy. He claimed to have visited in a mediumistic out-of-body experience, spiritual colonies organized with impressive perfection. There were schools, hospitals, temples, and even energy laboratories where mentors worked with vibrations and colors to restore disturbed consciousness. One of these places, according to Chico, was called Home of Hope, and it welcomed newly arrived souls who still felt trapped on Earth. There, each spirit received treatment according to their needs. Some slept for long periods, recovering their strength. Others studied, learning the laws of spiritual life. All were supported by spirits who dedicated their existences to invisible charity. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to meet again people you knew but didn't recognize as important until it was too late? Chico said this happens frequently. In the spiritual realm, the soul sees with true eyes and discovers that the stranger who crossed its path for a few minutes may have been a companion from other lives, someone with whom it had lessons to complete. Chance, he affirmed, does not exist either on Earth or in the afterlife. Each encounter is a seed of learning. Chico received messages from spirits who, after this phase of clarity, were invited to choose their next step. It is the moment of conscious decision. Some remain in the spiritual plane, dedicating themselves to the service of good, learning new tasks, helping those who arrive. Others ask to reincarnate, wishing to correct mistakes or continue interrupted missions. Free will remains, but now it is illuminated by expanded consciousness. There is no divine imposition. There is loving cooperation. More evolved spirits choose difficult experiences. Sometimes they are born into conditions of suffering or limitation, not as punishment but out of love. They are the volunteers of light, souls who return to Earth to teach by example. And if you had the chance to choose where and how to be reborn, what kind of life would you ask for? Would you seek comfort or learning? Chico said that most of us, while still in the body, believe we desire happiness. But upon awakening in the spiritual realm, we discover that what we truly seek is growth. The mature spirit understands that suffering is a school and that love is the only eternal diploma. There are also cases of spirits who, even though ready to reincarnate, prefer to remain in the spiritual world for a longer time, acting as mentors. Chico stated that many of these guides are close relatives who preceded us in death and today discreetly inspire us. He said that sometimes a sudden thought of comfort, a sudden intuition of hope, or an inexplicable strength in moments of despair are not just psychological reactions, they are touches from these invisible companions. The dead, Chico said, are only the living without bodies. One night in Uberaba, Chico recounted an episode that deeply affected him. During a meeting, he felt the presence of a spirit who had been a staunch atheist and radical materialist. This spirit, moved, asked to dictate a message. In tears, he wrote, "I discovered that what I called nothing is in truth the infinity of God." He described the moment he was embraced by luminous beings, one of them his own father, who had denied him throughout his life. He said that, in the first embrace, he understood the meaning of eternity. Chico read the message silently, with teary eyes, and only commented, "Not even pride can resist love." The most surprising thing, however, was how Chico described the learning process after this phase of awareness. He said that the spirit begins to understand the laws of the universe in a vivid way. It feels the vibration of thought, sees the colors of emotion, perceives the structure of the energies that sustain matter. It learns that every human gesture has cosmic resonance. A word of hatred can darken an entire environment. A sincere prayer can light up miles away. The awakened consciousness understands that it is a co-author of creation, and this revelation brings both responsibility and wonder. Chico said that, at this point, the spirit discovers the true meaning of time. There is no clock, but there is rhythm. The past, present, and future unite like waves in the same ocean. The soul understands that each life is just a note in the infinite symphony of evolution. It is an understanding that dissolves fear, because it shows that nothing is in vain, even suffering has a purpose. He once summarized this by saying, "Divine justice is so perfect that it transforms even error into a stepping stone to success." And that is why, when speaking of death, Chico didn't use a tone of ending, but of beginning. For him, death is the birth of wisdom. It is the moment when the spirit understands what it previously only believed. And, in understanding, it feels peace. The soul no longer fears eternity, because it discovers that it is the home from which it never left. When he finished his lectures, Chico always left a silent pause. He would look at the audience and say in a gentle voice, "To live is to prepare for that moment, because we will all go through it. But those who love, when they cross over, do not fall, they float." And this phrase, so simple and so vast, summarized what he taught throughout his life. Death is merely the point where consciousness encounters truth and chooses the path of its own light. And so, in this state of newly born lucidity, the spirit perceives itself free to move on, no longer bound to earth, but also not distant from it. Between worlds, learning, serving, rebuilding. It is on this threshold between learning and mission that the next stage of the spiritual journey begins, where the soul discovers that love, more than a path, is destiny. Chico Xavier said that, after the moment of awareness and choice, the soul's true challenge begins, adapting to the new way of existing. Spiritual lucidity is liberating, but also demanding. When the mind expands and perceives the scope of everything it has done and failed to do, the spirit feels the weight of the responsibility of being eternal. It's like waking from a dream and realizing that every thought had consequences, that every gesture traced an invisible path. From this point, the adjustment period begins. It is when the spirit faces the mirror of its own creations. For some, this phase is peaceful, full of discoveries. For others, it is dense, confusing, sometimes painful. Everything depends on what they built in life, and above all, on what they believed life to be. Chico used to say that there are spirits who, upon awakening, still believe they are alive. They try to sleep, eat, walk, and talk. They sit in their old chairs, visit the houses where they lived, listen to the sounds of the world, and don't understand why no one answers. Spiritual reality seems like a dream to them, and the dream, reality. It's a dangerous state, Chico said, because attachment to matter creates shadows in perception. The spirit lives between two worlds, unable to move forward or backward. That's why he always taught, detachment is the greatest form of preparation for eternity. Those who love without clinging, those who possess without becoming enslaved, awaken lighter. Those who cling to what is earthly awaken imprisoned by what no longer exists. But there is also the opposite. Spirits who, upon being freed, experience such an intense expansion of joy that they merge with the light itself. Chico described cases in which the soul, upon rediscovering its origin, wept with ecstasy. The sensation was of floating in an ocean of harmony. Time disappeared. Everything became vibration, sound, and color. One spirit in a psychography received by Chico described it thus: I felt myself within the heart of God, and I understood that I had always been there, but I didn't see it. This experience, he said, is the result of faith cultivated in life. Whoever trusts in God sincerely does not feel death, but rather the return. However, not everyone can tolerate the light right away. Chico explained that spiritual clarity is like the sun of truth. It illuminates, but it also reveals. And those who still carry inner blemishes try to escape their own vision. There are spirits who ask to return to darkness temporarily because they cannot yet bear the transparency of consciousness. They are taken to regions of rest, where they sleep for months or years, enveloped in restorative magnetism. In these places there is silence, music, and healing energy. Mentors and spiritual healers apply passes, treat invisible wounds, and explain what is happening. It is a period of convalescence for the soul. Chico said that these spiritual hospitals are full of love and discipline. There, learning is daily. Spirits who were doctors on earth serve as instructors, teaching that the true remedy is not the substance, but the vibration. Thought is the universal medicine. The patient improves when they learn to think differently. Once Chico received a message from a disembodied surgeon who said, "On earth I cut open bodies. Here, we learn to heal ideas." This phrase stuck with him. He repeated it whenever someone asked him about what exists beyond death. Here, the body is the instrument. There, thought is the scalpel. But in the midst of this recovery process, there are also moments of intense emotion. Chico recounted that, in certain cases, the spirit encounters people it has hurt. And these reunions are true tests. There is no way to lie or disguise anything. The vibrations reveal themselves. The feeling imposes itself. There are souls that embrace and free themselves in a single instant. Others distance themselves, unable to forgive each other. A woman who had betrayed her husband's trust in life, for example, told him in a communication that, upon meeting him again in the spiritual plane, she felt an inner fire consuming her. It wasn't punishment. It was the weight of the guilt she herself had created. He, however, looked at her tenderly and said, "What you did taught me to love without expecting anything in return." And at that moment, both were freed. According to Chico, these encounters are the true schools of the soul. It is there that the spirit learns the true meaning of forgiveness. Death does not end human conflicts. It only reveals them in a new light. What seemed forgotten resurfaces to be resolved. Therefore, relationships do not end with the body. They continue to adjust until they reach harmony. Chico said that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who love us most on a spiritual level, because they accept playing difficult roles so that we may learn something we would not learn alone. This revelation, although beautiful, is also painful. It dismantles illusions and shows that destiny is not punishment, but pedagogy. However, there is something even more surprising. After this period of understanding, the spirit begins to recall past lives with clarity. The memories come in flashes, places, faces, voices, emotions. Everything makes sense. That recent friend reveals himself to be a brother from other eras. That enemy was a companion on ancient journeys. The spirit realizes that human history is a great web of reunions, where everyone crosses paths again until love is fully established. Chico said that hatred is merely love asleep. When it awakens, it transforms into the force that heals. But awakening is not always gentle. Some spirits, remembering what they did, despair. They want to return immediately to fix the past. They ask for new opportunities. They beg for reincarnation. The mentors calm them, saying that everything has its right time. Haste is a human feeling. Divine wisdom works at an eternal pace. Others, on the contrary, resist. They don't want to return to Earth. They think they have already learned enough, that they could not endure another life of pain. Chico said that this fear is natural, but useless. The cycle of life does not obey the comfort of the spirit, but the laws of progress. Reincarnating is like going back to school. Nobody likes the tests, but everyone needs them. There were stories that Chico told to explain this process. One of them spoke of a rich and proud man who, upon dying, saw the suffering caused by his actions. In the spiritual realm, he asked to return to Earth and repair the wrong. He reincarnated as a humble worker, dedicated to charity. When he passed away again, he was received by those who had previously hated him. Now reconciled, nothing is lost, Chico would say. Everything is transformed into a lesson. At this point in the journey, the spirit begins to act as a collaborator for good. It learns that service is the highest form of healing. Chico said that many spirits, after going through the purification process, begin to visit places on Earth, helping those who are incarnate. They inspire doctors, comfort mothers, protect children, and guide decisions. They do not interfere directly, but work in the shadows as discreet messengers of light. Some, in their mediumistic accounts, said they felt more joy serving invisibly than living amidst human applause. But not everyone achieves this state of serenity easily. There are those who still feel trapped in the density of the earth, and their presence is perceived as a disturbance. Chico explained that the so-called suffering spirits are not demons, but disoriented brothers and sisters. Many of them are attracted by the vibrations of hatred, addiction, or despair that still exist among the living. He said that human thought is like a lighthouse. Whoever thinks of light attracts light. Whoever thinks of shadow attracts shadow. And that is why prayer has real power. To pray for a troubled spirit is to send it a compass, a sign that there is still a way forward. Once, Chico received a message from a spirit who had been murdered and, consumed by rage, was pursuing his attacker. For years he lived trapped in anger, unable to move on, until he heard a stranger praying for the murderer, asking for light and forgiveness. That vibration struck him like a breath of fresh air. He understood then that he would only be freed when he forgave. From then on, he began to change. No one is saved by hating, Chico said. Forgiveness is the key that opens all the doors of the soul. While telling these stories, Chico warned, the spiritual world is neither fantasy nor punishment. It is a continuation of who we are. Every emotion we nurture here will become the environment where we will live there. The difference is that, on the other side, there are no disguises. Thought materializes. Therefore, heaven and hell are mental constructs. What is intention today will be reality tomorrow. As this process of readjustment and learning unfolds, the soul begins to vibrate at a higher frequency. It becomes lighter, clearer, and when it finally understands that everything is transition, it achieves the serenity that the ancients called true peace. It is at this point that Chico said he saw the smiles of the mentors, like someone observing a child who has finally learned to walk alone. The soul, once fearful, now desires to serve, and serving is the last stage before complete freedom. But what happens after this state of harmony? What lies beyond healing, beyond forgiveness, beyond reunion? Chico left the answer for the end, and he did so on purpose. He said that the greatest secret of the universe can only be understood by those who have lived love to the end. And this revelation, the most luminous of all, begins in the last part of this journey. Chico Xavier used to say that the true meaning of life lies not in understanding what comes after death, but in living in such a way that awakening is serene. He believed that the greatest miracle is not surviving the passing, but transforming one's own heart while there is still time. Now that the journey has come to an end, after traversing the stages of detachment, awareness, reunion, and learning, the spirit and the observer need to look at their own existence with new eyes. What will we do with this knowledge? What changes when we understand that life does not end? This is the question that Chico left hanging in the air, with the same silence that precedes a revelation. He knew that understanding, without practice, is merely luminous theory that fades with the first breath of distraction. That is why he always said, knowing is the beginning, but serving is the path. The understanding of eternity was not given to us to generate fear, but to awaken responsibility. If everything we do returns to us in vibration, if every thought transforms into subtle matter, then every act of life is a seed, and seeds do not die. They wait for the right time to bloom. Death only reveals what we have planted. The question that matters is not when we will depart, but what we are sowing. Chico Xavier affirmed that the spirit awakens on the other side precisely at the moral point where it fell asleep here. Therefore, living is a rehearsal for eternity. Every act of kindness is a light lit on the spiritual path. Every forgiveness granted is an invisible step on the way back home. Nothing we do with love is lost. Even the smallest gesture, a smile, attentive listening, a comforting word transforms someone's destiny and alters the vibration of the universe. Chico said that humanity is a school and that we are all at different stages of learning. Some have already learned to love in silence. Others are still trying to forgive, and many are just awakening to the awareness that there is something beyond matter. But everyone progresses. Even those who fall advance. Suffering, when understood, is part of the growth process. He called it divine refinement. Just as a diamond needs friction to shine, the soul needs trials to expand. This vision changes everything. Pain ceases to be punishment and becomes an opportunity. Loss ceases to be tragedy and becomes transition. Time ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally. Many people asked Chico, "How can one live well, knowing that everything passes?" He answered, "By living as if each day were the first of eternity." This means looking at life with constant gratitude, being grateful for what we have, but also for what we lose. Being grateful for encounters and even farewells, because all situations are invitations to love better. Those who understand this stop chasing after what is ephemeral and begin to value what is essential. They begin to understand that forgiveness is more urgent than pride, that kindness is worth more than reason, and that peace is worth more than victory. But it's natural for the human heart to resist. Chico knew this and spoke tenderly about our weaknesses. "There is no perfect soul on earth," he would say, "but all are on their way." He never promised easy solutions, but always reminded us that there is support. There are invisible forces that sustain us, even when we don't believe in them. There are hands that lift us up when we fall. There are presences that inspire us when all seems lost. These presences, according to him, are spiritual friends, mentors, loved ones who continue to accompany us. They don't directly interfere in our decisions, but they breathe courage into our lives in silence. Every time we feel like giving up and yet we keep going, it's because someone on the other side believed in us. What if we knew with absolute certainty that we are never alone? How many different choices would we make? How many unspoken words would be spoken? How many ungiven hugs would be offered now? The awareness of eternity is a call to the urgency of love. There is no time to wait for the ideal moment. The right time is always now. Spiritual transformation does not begin after death, but the instant we decide to live with purpose. Chico used to say that each day is a small reincarnation. We wake up to begin again, and we fall asleep to reflect. If we make dawn a commitment to service and dusk an exercise in gratitude, we will be, little by little, converting life into a prelude to peace. But he also warned, knowing the light does not exempt us from the shadows. The evolving soul still stumbles. It still feels anger, jealousy, fear, pride. Mistakes are part of the journey. What changes is awareness. Before, we erred without knowing. Now, when we fall, we already understand that we need to get up. True spirituality is not the absence of flaws. It is the capacity for a new beginning. Each new effort is an invisible victory. And each time we choose love instead of indifference, we strengthen our bond with the divine. Chico said that God does not demand perfection, only sincerity. The important thing is not never to fall, but never to give up on getting up. There is a transformative force that arises when we understand that the spirit is eternal. The fear of death disappears, and with it, the fear of living also disappears. We begin to see time as an ally. Every second is an opportunity for evolution. The small things of daily life, preparing a meal, listening attentively to someone, smiling for no reason, become sacred acts. Spirituality, Chico taught, is not in grand visions, but in daily kindness. It is in not retaliating against offenses, in helping without fanfare, in being grateful for what we have. It is in the ordinary that the divine manifests itself. When we raise our gaze above the routine, we realize that life itself is already a prayer. Chico believed that the earth is undergoing a collective awakening process. With each generation, more people realize that the meaning of existence lies in inner transformation. The world renews itself when a heart decides to act with compassion. It is a silent but real movement. He said that every act of kindness creates invisible waves that expand and reach unimaginable places. A word of love can save an entire destiny, he affirmed. Therefore, he invited us to act, not to wait. Prayer is powerful, but action is living prayer. Whoever extends a hand to someone in distress is praying in motion. At this point, Chico would usually pause for a long time before concluding. He would look at people with a sweet but firm gaze and say, "Death is not the end, but a new beginning. The true end would be to stop loving." These words resonate to this day, as if they came from infinity itself. They remind us that everything we are is being built at this very moment, in the choices we make, in the actions we repeat. Eternity is not a distant destination. It begins now, within us. And that is why the greatest lesson is not to understand death, but to choose to live in such a way that, when death arrives, there is no regret. So what do we do with everything we've heard so far? The answer is simple. Live consciously. Love more. Judge less. Pray not only on your knees, but with actions. Forgive without waiting to be asked. Care for the living and remember those who have passed with serenity, not despair. Value each sunrise as a new chance to evolve. When we live like this, death loses its power to frighten. The spirit learns to smile in the face of the unknown because it recognizes the constant presence of God. Right now, you might feel a mixture of emotion and silence. That's natural. The topic of death always evokes memories and longing. But if this video touched your heart, it's a sign that the message fulfilled its purpose. Because understanding what Chico Xavier taught is not just consolation, it's an invitation. An invitation to transform the way we look at life, to make pain stepping stones and lost pathways. He said that faith is the exercise of continuing, even without understanding everything. And that's what love does. It keeps believing. May this message resonate within you far beyond words. May it inspire you to look with tenderness at what still needs healing, to be grateful for what you have already overcome, and to courageously follow the path of light. If something within you has awakened, even silently, write in the comments, "I choose to evolve." Even anonymously, this declaration is a seed of commitment to your own soul. Like this video if it brought peace to your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of light and understanding. Because life goes on, and love, true love, is the only legacy we will carry forever.